working, I think. Okay. It's working. So. Okay, I see. Om Tavakatamratam Tapta Jivanam Kaviviritam Kalmashapaham Sharavanamangalam Shrivadatatam Bhuvigananti Kuriraj. Your words are like nectar, bringing life to scorched souls. They are praised by poets and remove all sin. They are auspicious to hear, wonderful and exalted. Those who spread these words throughout the world are truly giving souls. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our class on the Gospel of Ramakrishna. It's been several weeks since I've been here. Last week, of course, we had Swami Sarvadevanandji. We had our nice weekend program. And today is a very, very auspicious day. Today is it's the New Year day for various parts of India. There's Bengal and Tamil Nadu and many other areas. And it's Good Friday. And it's Passover. And it's also, we're in the middle of Ramadan. So, yeah. So it's very unusual that so many things falling on the same day. We're on the chapter Instruction to Vaishnavas and Brahmos. This is page 314 in the Gospel, and the date is November 26, 1883. Most of the conversation so far has been with Vijay Krishna Goswami. And if I remember correctly, that he had just renounced the world. I think he showed up in wearing his Garo cloth. Anyone remember?
This meeting was in Ragopal Sen's house?
Yes. Anyhow, this is Vijay Krishna Goswami. He was a member of the Brahmo Samaj. He was a little bit younger than Keshav. Keshav was, I think, 2 years younger than Sri Ramakrishna. He was born in 1838, and Vijay Krishna Goswami in 1841. So they were all within a few years of each other. And they were very close friends, Vijay and Keshav. But then because of the small scandal, we can say, with the marriage of his daughter. Anyhow, there was a separation of the two, the Brahmo Samaj into two groups. He became head of one. Paid acharya, paid teacher, not exactly the head. He wasn't the most important person, but Thakur always recognized in him that the fit with the Brahmo Samaj was not a good fit. The Brahmo Samaj didn't care for a lot of traditional Hindu devotional practices. In fact, they didn't allow it. There's a lot of image worship. They didn't accept a lot of teachings, the avatar and a lot of the Puranic stories and everything. But Vijay came from a very famous lineage. He had a very famous lineage. He was actually born in Nodia. And I always connected him with Narayanganj in the East Bengal, Bangladesh, because he lived there for some time. But he was actually born in the family of Advaita Goswami. So right in the same place where he was born, the Shantipur, that same area. And Sri Ramakrishna always said that he had that samskara within him, that devotion to the personal God, because of his lineage and his upbringing and everything. So it was only a matter of time when it would come out. And also, he had this longing for God realization and renunciation. I don't know much about his family, but he was married. He was a family person. This is what did we say? 1883. So he's 42 years old, roughly. And around this time, I think he had already done this. He renounced the world. Now, we always wonder, well, what about the family and everything? And I don't know too much, but possibly the family, the children, if were grown up. And in those days, it was different, joint families and everything. You kind of married into a family, not just an individual. And there was always someone to look after, maybe grown children and everything. I don't know too much, but we find sometimes those who were married who want to renounce, Ramakrishna scolds them that you have your duties and obligations in the family. Other times, if he knows it's very, very sincere, he encourages them. So this was one of those cases. Thakur was very, very fond of him. He was very devoted to Sri Ramakrishna, and Thakur was very happy that he took to that life of full renunciation. He later became considered a very great saint in the Vaishnava tradition. So Thakur has been talking mostly to Vijay, and a lot of it is about renunciation. So all this strong talk of renunciation is because Vijay had just renounced, if I remember correctly. Anyhow, sometime around this time, he's about to renounce everything. So where we left off before was Sri Ramakrishna was talking about in the Bhagavata, the Avadhuta. He told the story of the kite, and then so the Avadhuta learned this lesson from the kite that as long as a man has the fish that his worldly desires, he must perform actions and consequently suffer from worry, anxiety, and restlessness. No sooner does he renounce these desires than his activities fall away and he enjoys peace of soul. This is where we left the last time we were here. Tyagat Shantiranantaram. I mentioned that last time. This is one of those phrases in the Gita that really resonates. It goes right back to this story that once we let go, immediately we get peace. Once we cling to things, then we're chased by 1,000 crows, and that means worries and anxieties and everything. Once we let go. Now, in the case of the sannyasi, it means literally, really letting go and renouncing everything. In the case of the householder, it means let God take care of things. Let mother decide how things will turn out. I'll do my best. Let her worry about everything. So that kind of idea. So Thakur says, but work without any selfish motive is good. So remember, he's talking to a whole group of people, not just Vijay. So he has to balance things. For the Vijay, he's saying, yes, time has come to give up everything. But then there are other people there. So work without selfish motive. So this is Thakur's emphasis on internal renunciation. Internal renunciation, mostly giving up any selfish motive for things, any desire for praise or getting reward for things that we do, to have a pure motive for things. But work without any selfish motive is good. It does not create any worry, but it is very difficult to be totally unselfish. We may think that our work is selfless, but selfishness comes unknown to us from no one knows where. This is something that we have to keep reminding ourselves of, because we think that we have no selfish motive, and then as soon as somebody either doesn't give us credit or criticizes us, then we feel it. And then we know that there was a little bit behind it all. At least we'd like to be appreciated. We don't have to be praised, but at least we'd like to think that somebody noticed that we did a nice thing. We don't care if our name is on the side of a building, but it'll be nice. Huh? So a little bit will creep in. But if a man has already undergone great spiritual discipline, then as a result of it, he may be able to do work without any selfish motive. So this is that the necessity for meditation, because in meditation we start to understand the apparent nature of the ego, of this I, that is not real, and that is not terribly important, and that it's a lot of it is our own imagination, and it's the source of all problems in this world. So in meditation, it's very good for us to feel that this I that I'm clinging to, this personality and all of that, it's just of my own making. It's an idea. This ego, it's an idea that I have of myself, of who I am, and how I want other people to see me and appreciate me and all of that. And there's nothing real, there's nothing substantial. It's an idea. It's something that we create. We create our own self-image, and we want other people to appreciate us for that. So in meditation, we can clearly see, we can get a real sense of what is the real nature of the self, and we can observe this ego is just this sense I have of who I am or who I want people to think I am. And there's nothing ultimately real about it. Otherwise, it just keeps coming back. Thakur says so many times that we can analyze 1,000 times, he says, 1,000 times, and understand that this ego is just Maya, that has no real existence. The next minute it comes back. So at least if we do this spiritual practice and meditation, there's a chance that we'll be able to do work in more of a selfless spirit, at least. So he says, but if a man has already undergone great spiritual discipline, then as a result of it, he may be able to do work without any selfish motive. May be able to, even then it's difficult. And notice that he's always saying that we have to do our spiritual practice first, because we get entangled too easily in the beginning. So Thakur always emphasizes that before we get too mixed up with the world, we have to do a little spiritual practice. We have to be able to separate ourselves, know the self to be distinct from everything else. Otherwise, like milk and water, it gets mixed up. So he says a little spiritual practice so that we can separate it and we can turn the milk into curd and into butter. Then it can float in the water of the world and won't mix with it. Otherwise, this world is too strong for us. It'll overtake us, and we won't be able to maintain our balance in the midst of everything. After the vision of God, a man can easily do unselfish work. Now, Thakur has three different ways of expressing the same idea. After the vision of God is too high. If we say that I won't do any work until I've got vision, then probably I'll spend a whole life not doing any work. Sometimes he says after getting knowledge, then one can work in the world. Sometimes after getting devotion. He uses these three terms. So knowledge means that we have a little discrimination. We know what's real, what's important, what's not important. And devotion means that we know that things are not in our hands, that we want to do everything as an offering. So we can take it that way. This after the attainment of God, of course, then one can easily do unselfish work, but we can't wait for that. We have to do our spiritual practice, and then gradually we'll be able to work in the world without getting too entangled. So after the vision of God, a man can easily do unselfish work. In most cases, action drops away after the attainment of God. Only a few, like Narada, work to bring light to mankind. So this is another distinction. Thakur is a very good psychologist. He knows that there are different natures. People have different natures, different classes of people. Some after God realization, and then like the mother who just gives birth to the child, she'll just play with the child. She has no other household duties to do for a while. But others, he says, if a clerk is thrown into prison and he's let out of prison, what will he do? Go around singing and dancing in the streets? He'll go back to being a clerk. So we have two different scenarios, you can say. One isn't higher than the other. It depends on the nature and what type of karma we have, what the Divine Mother has in store for us. The Avadhuta accepted a bee as another teacher. This is a beautiful section in the Bhagavata Purana with the 24 teachers that the Avadhuta had, all different animals and insects, nature things. Bees accumulate their honey by days of hard labor, but they cannot enjoy the honey, for man soon breaks the comb and takes it away. The Avadhuta learned this lesson from the bees, that one should not lay things up. Now, Avadhuta means a sadhu. So Thakur is very clear that this is not, the householder has to. If the householder doesn't save for the future to look after the family, and then he's not doing his duty. This is for the, Thakur says what? Sadhus and birds. Yeah, there's a Hindi expression. What is it? Panchi or Darvesh. Yeah. So they don't save up anything. So the Avadhuta learned this lesson from the bees, that one should not lay things up. Sadhus, so now he's explaining, sadhus should depend 100% on God. They must not gather for the morrow. Now, this is something that Thakur followed literally to such an extent that if by mistake he kept something for the future, then he would start to reel. He wouldn't know why. There was one incident that we know of. There are many of them, of course, but one, he had some stomach trouble, and he was given a little bit of opium, which was used. Opium has a constipating effect. So without thinking too much about it, he put it in his pocket and started to go walk back home. He must have been at Jadoo Malik's house, and he didn't know why he started reeling and started going towards the Ganga as if he's going to drown himself in the Ganga. And then it occurred to him that he had kept something to save for the future use. And then he got rid of it, and then he was okay after. So things manifested in his life in a very literal way, that renouncing gold meant he literally couldn't touch it, that his hand would curl up and everything. So he very often said that, even simple things. He was once asked to take something for Ramlal, some food or something. He said, "No, I can't take anything for the future." It wasn't even for him. And the interesting thing is that the same Ramakrishna, who couldn't save anything, had a whole savings plan for Holy Mother, for buying her bangles and also for her future. So he also could make exceptions in certain cases, but for himself, he would never do it. But this does not apply to the householder. He must bring up his family. Therefore, it is necessary for him to provide. Here it is, birds and monks do not hoard. Yet birds also hoard for their chicks after their chicks are hatched. They collect food in their beaks for their young ones. Let me tell you one thing, Vijay. Don't trust a sadhu if he keeps bag and baggage with him and a bundle of clothes with many knots. So that means there's not full reliance. What will I do if this cloth tears? I better keep another one, just in case. It means there's no full reliance. Some idea of possessions means that we also think of ourselves as a body. That if we think of ourselves as the self, then we can't own anything. We can't own anything. There has to be some I sense, ego sense, for us to feel that we own something. Even this body, we feel we don't own if we don't have that ego sense. I've told the story many times about Swami Bhuteshanandaji, when he was very ill at the end, and they wanted to perform another surgery. He was in his upper 90s, and the doctors said, "We can't bring ourselves to ask this poor man at that age to undergo another surgery. One of you will have to do it." I think it was Swami Atmajnanananda. that he said, okay, I'll talk to him. And he said, Maharaj, if we do this surgery, that this will extend your life. We don't know how long, maybe a few years or something. But of course, there's the recovery time and everything. It's not an easy surgery. Are you willing to do it? And he said, when I became a monk, I gave up all sense of possession of even this body. Even this body belongs to Thakur, it belongs to the order. You're the trustees. If you all think it'll serve some purpose for this body to live longer, then you do the surgery. So even no sense of possession with his own body. So, but this is for the sadhus. This is what Thakur is saying. So don't trust a sadhu if he keeps bag and baggage with him and a bundle of clothes with many knots. I've seen such sadhus under the banyan tree in the Panchavati. 2 or 3 of them were seated there. Yeah, one of the special features of the Kali temple, Dakshineshwar Kali temple, was that there were so many arrangements made to feed wandering sadhus and pilgrims and poor people. There were 2 different feeding areas, one for Kali temple and one for the Radhakanta temple. One will be vegetarian, one non-vegetarian. So many sadhus went there. It was a well-known place. They were welcome there. There was a place where they could stay and take food and everything. So I've seen such sadhus under the banyan tree, the Panchavati. 2 or 3 of them were seated there. One was picking over lentils. Yeah, sometimes they wouldn't take food. They would get foodstuffs. They would get rice and dal and things like that, and they would cook on their own. Thakur himself did that in the beginning. Some were sewing their clothes, and all were gossiping about a feast they had enjoyed in a rich man's house. They said among themselves, that rich man spent 100,000 rupees on the feast and fed the sadhu sumptuously with cake, sweets, and many such delicious things. All laugh. Vijay, it is true. I've seen such sadhus at Gaya. They are called the Lotawala sadhus of Gaya. That means that carrying this water pot. I don't know what special significance, but Master to Vijay. When love of God is awakened, work drops away of itself. Yeah, this is another theory of Thakur. Love of God, or any type of, as we get closer and, spiritual attainment, it can be for the Jnani also. When that longing for realization becomes stronger and stronger, then he says that work just falls off on its own. He never recommended forcing ourselves to give up. He said renunciation, it comes in course of time through our sincere longing and everything, that Mother will reduce our work. If God makes some men work, let them work. It is now time for you to give up everything. So this is when Vijay is renouncing. Renounce all and say, O mind, may you and I alone behold the Mother, letting no one else intrude. Saying this, Sri Ramakrishna began to sing in his soul-enthralling voice. Cherish my precious Mother Shyama tenderly within, O mind. May you and I alone behold her, letting no one else intrude. O mind, in solitude enjoy her, keeping the passions all outside. Take but the tongue, that now and again it may cry out, O Mother, Mother. Suffer no breath of base desire to enter and approach us there, but bid true knowledge stand on guard, alert and watchful evermore. The Master to Vijay. Surrender yourself completely to God and set aside all such things as fear and shame. Give up such feelings as, what will people think of me if I dance in the ecstasy of God's holy name? The saying, one cannot have the vision of God as long as one has these 3, shame, hatred, and fear, is very true. Shame, hatred, fear, caste, pride, secretiveness, and the like are so many bonds. Man is free when he is liberated from all these. Loja grina bhoy tin takte noi. Thakur used to use this expression. Holy Mother said the opposite. Of course, the context is different. Sometimes we find the Holy Mother looking at things from a little different angle. And specifically with women, this lojja, see, when Thakur uses it, it really means that we have some shame or we get embarrassed. Why do we get embarrassed? Huh? Ego. What do we care what people think? And fear and anger and hatred, all of these things, they're all passions that represent some type of an obstacle in spiritual life. But the same Thakur said that the lojja in the sense of modesty, and Holy Mother also. This is a special ornament for women. Now it sounds a little bit sexist. Why just women and not men? Men also should. They should have a little bit of this, at least lack of arrogance and everything. So for Holy Mother, that there's an absence of pride and modesty, we can say, was very important. Loja Grena boy, and we have to protect ourselves. We have to be not fearful exactly, but we have to know when the people can harm us in some way, spiritually or otherwise. We have to protect ourselves. But the shame, Thakur, he used to scold M quite a bit when because M was very shy and didn't like to show any emotion and things. He didn't like to sing in front of others or get up and dance when the others would get up and dance. So Thakur would sometimes scold him a little bit. So it's a balance. We shouldn't be too much in one direction or the other direction. That means we have to preserve a little bit of proper decorum at least. But for someone like Vijay, who he will become an ecstatic Vaishnava sadhu, they sing and dance, and who cares? Look at Thakur. He would sing and dance. His cloth would fall off. He'd be naked like a baby. He didn't care. So for someone like him, that it's that perfect innocence and purity and the whole mind given to God that you don't care about anything else. So these are specifically here for Vijay, that his life is taking a huge turn. Here it's so strange. He's in this conservative organization, the Brahmo Samaj, highly conservative. They were all well-to-do people, well-educated people. They weren't the type to go about doing kirtan in the streets and singing and dancing. Although after meeting Thakur, they did a lot of kirtan, and they learned to sing and dance and everything. But Vijay was really cut from a different cloth from the others. How he got involved with that? Of course, Keshav was so charismatic. All of Thakur's disciples, so many of them, were also enamored with Keshav, and they had to meet Ramakrishna to really fully blossom according to their own inner spiritual mood. This is what happened with Vijay. That this meeting with Thakur really opened everything up for him. So the master said to Vijay, surrender yourself completely to God and set aside all such things as fear and shame. Give up such feelings as, what will people think of me if I dance in the ecstasy of God's holy name? The saying, one cannot have the vision of God as long as one has these three. Shame, hatred, and fear is very true. Shame, hatred, fear. Caste. Sri Ramakrishna, two things that we know. One is when he would go at night, spend the whole night in the jungle north of his room in the Kali temple area. He would remove his sacred thread, and Rita used to scold him. Why do you do that? And he said, sacred thread. There's some pride that comes from feeling I'm a Brahmin. I have the sacred thread. So to get rid of that, and then we know, of course, with Rochi, with cleaning the latrines and everything of the sweeper, to get rid of this feeling of caste, pride of caste. Secretiveness, this is another one. that there are many people that they just don't want people to know anything about them. They'll hide things somehow. That somehow they make a big distinction. This is a personal thing. They don't want to talk about it. Even good things. If they're very well educated or something, they don't want to tell other people. That it's sometimes the good motive behind it, but it all goes back to this caring so much about what other people think of us. It all goes back to some ego idea. So these are so many bonds. Man is free when he is liberated from all these. When bound by ties, one is jiva. When free from ties, one is Shiva. Pash Bodho, Jiva. Pash Mukto, Shiva. Yeah. So that means the same. The same. What is the difference between the God realized soul and the Jiva? This is the same. Only there's this bondage that comes from this false identification, which leads to all of these different passions and everything. Prema, ecstatic love of God, is a rare thing. First of all, one acquires bhakti. Now, when Thakur talks about the path of knowledge and who can attain to what stages and samadhi and all of that, he'll make all of these distinctions. That who can have savikalpa samadhi, who can have nirvikalpa samadhi, who will be brought down, who can stay on the roof, who will jump over, all of that. Similarly, with the different stages of bhakti, these are all things that were very scholastically and scholarly defined in the works of the Goswamis, Rupa and Sanatan, mostly the Goswamis. All these different levels of spiritual emotion and the spiritual moods and physical manifestations and everything. It's what is it, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, a very big book with all of these different things. So they talk about bhakti and prema and bhava, mahabhava, these different stages. And Thakur, just as an ordinary jiva can experience some of the highest states of samadhi without coming back, there'll also be limits to how much the heights of devotion that we can reach also. It's all a question of the size of the receptacle. This is a theory of Adhar. That some get filled up very easily. These huge, like he'll talk about Chaitanya Deva, that a huge amount of water can enter into them. And like we always talked about Swamiji. Swamiji was a huge receptacle. That others, a little bit of ecstasy, they'll be singing and dancing and going and falling down and everything. And Swamiji, he could withstand so much more. That because he was a huge vessel that way. So first of all, one acquires bhakti. Bhakti is single-minded devotion to God. Bhakti sometimes we take as the highest. It's according to the Yoga Sutras and Bhakti Yoga and everything. That's a different sense. That's a bhakti which includes everything else. But now as a stage, this will be a little bit restricted. Bhakti is single-minded devotion to God, like the devotion a wife feels for her husband. So that nishtha, that not caring for anything else, that one-pointed devotion. It is very difficult to have unalloyed devotion to God. Through such devotion, one's mind and soul merge in Him. Then comes bhava. So bhava, the way we understand it, just when we keep reading, Thakur goes into bhava, is that it's a type of ecstasy where one is not aware of one's surroundings. Even Thakur, he gives other illustrations that the three different stages that Chaitanya Deva was in. Some he would sing and dance. Some he would just the in between type of stage. Others he's lost to the world completely. So yeah,
Shraddha and then bhakti and then
Shraddha is something that's common to every spiritual, but not just the path of devotion, but the path of knowledge. Shraddha, we have to start out with this feeling of humility and reverence for the tradition, the teachings of the scriptures, teachings of the guru, a little faith and conviction that what we're told can happen will happen. We have to start out with that. It doesn't matter if we're jnanis or we're bhaktas; it doesn't make any difference what path it is. We need the shraddha. So this is the most important prerequisite in spiritual life, shraddha. If we start out with pride that we think we know everything, that no one can teach us anything, then we won't make any progress in spiritual life. I think that this we don't usually we say faith, shraddha. I think humility is almost the most important element. Shraddha includes so many different elements, aspects to it. So this humility that we're able to go to a teacher and say, you please tell me what to do. I take refuge with you. I don't know what's good for me, what's not good for me. Whatever you tell me, I'll try to understand to the best of my ability. It doesn't mean that we accept anything without analyzing it. That's not Shraddha. So Swamiji had intense Shraddha for Sri Ramakrishna because he never disregarded anything he said. He took it very seriously. If he didn't understand it, he'd tell him. It doesn't make sense to me. And then ultimately, he understood everything. So it's not just pretending that we understand and accepting things without understanding. That's not Shraddha. Shraddha means that we can say that, yes, I hear these teachings, I read, Thakur says this, I don't understand it. I know that the fall is with me because I see he doesn't say anything that doesn't turn out to be of value and true and good for me. That how can I understand it better? It doesn't mean that we pretend that we understand everything because we can't. Impossible. So this Shraddha is first, whether it's a path of devotion or knowledge or meditation or karma yoga or anything. We have to have that. So first, he says bhakti, then comes bhava. So bhava, when we say Sri Ramakrishna goes into bhava, it's a type of, I don't want to say savikalpa samadhi, because savikalpa samadhi is also, the mind is pretty much blank and empty. But some sense of I, some awareness that we're in that state is there. There's bhava, there can be all sorts of visions and ecstatic moods and emotion, the tears flowing and everything. So that's the bhava. Through bhava, a man becomes speechless. His nerve currents are stilled. Kumbhaka comes by itself. So we even breaths will stop, as if we're shocked by something. We stop breathing. It is like the case of a man whose breath and speech stop when he fires a gun. So this will be, more of a Raja Yoga example, that intense concentration. That before you shoot, they even tell you that hold your breath. If you breathe, you may shake a little bit. Hold your breath and be perfectly concentrated and everything. So that kumbhaka will come. But prema, ecstatic love, is an extremely rare thing. So now he's making this distinction that this is a higher level that we find Radha had and Chaitanya Deva and others. That it's really similar to our Raja Yoga, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi. That it intensifies, and then flips into a slightly different category. So there's not huge difference between bhakti, bhava, and prema, except that it's more intense and more ecstatic, and reaches a different level, and we reach a point where we can't contain it. It becomes too much. Like the bull in the china shop, it just destroy everything. Thakur says the elephant goes into a tiny straw hut, and it'll just break it. That means the body can't hold it. Even the body can't hold it. So Thakur sometimes says, just like the Ishvara Koti alone can come back from Nirvikalpa Samadhi, that the ordinary jiva, if they attain to these very high states of Mahabhava and everything, that also the whole system will be shattered. They won't be able to withstand it. Fortunately, all we want to do is fill our container. We don't care about whether it's called prema or mahabhava or anything like that. That'll be enough. That'll be enough uh, to have that realization. See, the difference will be the spiritual power that we have and everything. We don't care about those things. But prema, ecstatic love, is an extremely rare thing. Chaitanya had that love. When one has prema, one forgets all outer things. One forgets the world. One even forgets one's own body, which is so dear to a man. The master began to sing, "Oh, when will dawn the blessed day, when tears of joy will flow from my eyes as I repeat Lord Hari's name? Oh, when will dawn the blessed day, when all my craving for the world will vanish straight away from my heart, and with the thrill of his holy name, all of my hair will stand on end. Oh, when will dawn that blessed day?" See, the devotee doesn't care for this samadhi or mukti or any of these other things. Just to be able to feel that ecstatic love of God. So the talk of divine things was proceeding when some invited Brahmo devotees entered the room. Yeah, now we're at whose house? Joy Gopal Sen, somebody's house. Huh? This is one of the Brahmo festivals. Mani Malik's house, Manilal Malik's house. So during these festivals, there are different things going on. There are different rooms. Some people will be downstairs, some upstairs. So anyhow, he was talking mostly to Vijay this whole time. Of course, M is there. If M is not there, we're not there. We don't know what took place. This is what M. It's so interesting that there'll be times when Thakur just goes something. He'll go to the Pine Grove. He'll go to the Panchapati, and M will be by his side. Nobody else will go. Just M. And we don't think about it much, but otherwise we don't get the description unless M is there. So anytime there's conversation going on, M is there. And Thakur knows it. And Thakur knows that this will get recorded. And not that it's pre-planned or anything like that. Thakur is thinking, oh, let me call M so he can remember. But it's part of the whole Leela. So the talk of divine things was proceeding when some invited Brahmo devotees entered the room. There were among them a few pundits and high government officials. Yeah, this Brahmo Samaj was really for the elite, for the very well-educated people and high-positioned people. I'm sure there were others also, but this was mostly for them. Sri Ramakrishna had said that bhava stills the nerve currents of the devotee. He continued, when Arjuna was about to shoot at the target, the eye of a fish, his eyes were fixed on the eye of the fish and on nothing else. This isn't a real fish, huh? Do they make a target to look like a fish or something? They used to have these contests. Who was the best archer and everything? Huh? So it's probably something like that. I don't know. But they would also have flying birds and things. But this, I doubt if it's just a fish. Anyhow, sometimes he says the eye of a bird. He gives this example a couple of times. So when Arjuna was about to shoot at the target, the eye of a fish, his eyes were fixed on the eye of the fish and on nothing else. He didn't even notice any part of the fish except the eye. In such a state, the breathing stops and one experiences kumbhaka. This kumbhaka, we know it's one of the three elements of pranayama. You breathe in, then you hold it, kumbhaka, and then you let it out. Rechaka, and I don't know all these things. Another characteristic of God vision is that a great spiritual current rushes up along the spine and goes toward the brain. If then the devotee goes into samadhi, he sees God. So this is The same type of explanation we have for Raja Yoga, we have for Bhakti Yoga. The same idea, this spiritual current, only in the form of emotion, spiritual emotion, will also be going up. The same way with Raja Yoga, it'll be more intense concentration and one-pointedness and merging in the object and everything. Looking at the Brahmo devotees who had just arrived, the master said, mere pundits devoid of divine love talk incoherently. This means that Thakur didn't have a very high opinion of the people who just walked in. That he recognizes that these are pundits and these are high officials and everything, but see, he was having so much fun with Vijay. He loved Vijay. And Vijay was soaking up these words. We know that he had great reverence for Sri Ramakrishna. And now people are coming in, so he has to say something. Mere pundits devoid of divine love talk incoherently. Pandit Samadhyayi once said in the course of his sermon, this poor man, he gets quoted for this one thing over and over again. God is dry, nirosh. Make him sweet by your love and devotion. Imagine, to describe him as dry, whom the Vedas declares the essence of bliss. It makes one feel that the Pandit didn't know what God really is. That was why his words were so incoherent. A man once said, there are many horses in my uncle's cowshed. From that, one could know that the man had no horses at all. No one keeps a horse in a cowshed. Some people pride themselves on their riches and power, their wealth, honor, and social position, but these are only transitory. So now he's talking directly to these new visitors who would come. These are wealthy people, high-positioned people, and educated pundits, educated people. But these are only transitory. Nothing will remain with you in death. There's a song that runs. Remember this, O mind, nobody is your own. Maybe Dakmon Keo Karuna. This is a very beautiful song, very powerful song. Yeah, this is a fantastic song. Remember this, O mind, nobody is your own. Vain is your wandering in this world. Trapped in the subtle snare of Maya as you are, do not forget the mother's name. Only a day or two, men honor you on earth as Lord and Master. All too soon, that form, so honored now, must needs be cast away when death, the Master, seizes you. Even your beloved wife, for whom, while yet you live, you fret yourself almost to death, will not go with you then. She too will say farewell and shun your corpse as an evil thing. This is the theme of that great poem, Bhaja Govinda, Shankaracharya. If you read that, you'll get that feeling of intense renunciation. And constantly this idea thinking of death, and this body, really think about it. This body that is such a desirable thing, that people fall in love with the beauty in youth, that it'll be ashes one day. And before that, you leave it for a long enough time, it'll shrivel up, it'll start to smell, it'll get rotten. No one will want to go near it. That same body that people lust after. And this is one type of Paratipaksha Bhavana, is one type of spiritual practice where we try to think of these things in order to get rid of this attachment we have. That everything we possess, everything will be gone. Either it'll go before us or we'll go and we'll leave it behind. And this idea that no one is our very own. This is another example of Holy Mother giving the opposite teaching without a contradiction. The two different spiritual moods. She says, everyone is our own, no one is a stranger. Learn to make the whole world your own. Feel oneness with everyone. This is looking at it from the other side, that this world is full of hypocrisy. It is full of a hollowness, that people who love you one day, they'll hate you the next day. I always think it's not a nice example, but the husband and wife that love each other to death till death do us part, and only want the welfare of the other. The wife is only happy if the husband is happy. Husband is only happy if the wife is happy. If one of them comes one day and says, "You're only happy if I'm happy," yes, my darling. And he said, "I found somebody else that I love who makes me happy." Instantly, hatred, the worst type of hatred, and then the most worst type of divorce will take place and everything. So where is any permanence in these things? How it's fickle all of these things are, and we know people who praise us to our face, they'll criticize us behind our backs. We know all these things, so we have to remind ourselves sometimes that what is it that we can hold on to that's never going to fail us? The Divine Mother. Now we may say that our own parents, mother, father, something like that, that they'll never fail us, that they'll love us and everything. It's true to a certain extent, of course. This is a little bit too strong. That there are cases of people who have tremendous loyalty no matter what. There are unselfish people, but for the most part, we have to admit that this world uh, is not a very safe place to if we want to if we have nothing else to hold on to, but these relationships, temporary things, and everything. That even Swamiji, he said he had that relationship with Swami Brahmananda, right? And how much all of the brother disciples loved each other and loved him, and he loved them. He said, "They all may leave me. The only one that I know won't ever leave me is Rakal, Raja Maharaj." So if we can imagine, if he felt that way about the most selfless, God intoxicated and the holy people we can imagine, then what about ordinary people? That we know, and the people will just one day they're our friends, the next day they don't look at us. We don't know why. Maybe we said something we didn't realize. It happens that way. Yeah, Thakur gives those stories about the guru who tells the disciple, "No one is your own but God," and he says, "No, my parents, everyone loves me so much," and then we see the results that they're little too strong, a little bit too strong. That there is selfless love in this world to a certain extent, within limits, but for the most part, the world is like that. We really can't. We we make a big mistake if that's all that we have to hold on to. One must not be proud of one's money. If you say that you are rich, then one can remind you that there are richer men than you, and others richer still, and so on. At dusk, the glowworm comes out and thinks that it lights the world, but its pride is crushed when the stars appear in the sky. The stars feel that they give light to the earth, but when the moon rises, the stars fade in shame. The moon feels that the world smiles at its light, and that it lights the earth. Then the eastern horizon becomes red. The sun rises. The moon fades, and after a while is no longer seen. If wealthy people would think that way, they would get rid of their pride in their wealth. Manilal had provided a sumptuous feast in celebration of the festival. He entertained the master and the other guests with great love and attention. It was late at night when they returned to their homes. We have to find a balance sometimes. We don't want to have such a poor self-image of ourselves, and we don't want to be too proud. So it's a real balance. It's not good. And Thakur didn't like that attitude. I'm nobody. I'm nothing. That I'm a sinner and everything. We have to recognize that we have some good qualities. We have some bad qualities. That we're a work in progress. I think one of the great advantages we have is that we have the examples of the direct disciples. Thakur and Ma, that's too high. we shouldn't even try to think about comparing ourselves to them. But we have these other great examples. I remember one time years ago, a young man wrote to me, a very nice, sincere young man, who uh, he belonged to one of these. Should I tell the name? There's a Vidyapit, Vivekananda Vidyapit. Very nice young man. But he wrote to me that sometimes I feel proud because I'm kind of the leader of this little group. That there are many other students there. It's a wonderful organization, the Vidyapit. And they kind of look up to me. They'll ask me questions. And what do I do about this little bit of pride that I have? So I wrote back to him that all we have to do is look at the direct disciples, and we see what giants they are, and how can we have any pride at all in our attainments when we see the heights to which they've reached, and who they are and what they are and everything. So not to make us feel small, but to make us be realistic about ourselves, and to get rid of any chance of pride and arrogance. So this is why it's good. It's good to take stock sometimes, and see that if we start to feel that we've done some great thing, or something, then we look at people who've really done great things. We think we have some knowledge. We look at people who really have it. We think we have a little devotion. We look at these great souls who, and renunciation and everything. So it's good for us to understand that there's value to our lives, but we shouldn't think of too much of ourselves. That's all. So this is the end of that chapter, Instruction to Vaishnavas and Brahmos. The next chapter, we'll start next time, is the last visit to Keshav. So this timing of this is very interesting, because the two main figures of the Brahmo Samaj now, one is about to pass away and the other is about to renounce the world and leave. So after this, of course, I don't know the history of the Brahmo Samaj that well, but after this is a real turning point in that movement. So we'll stop here. We'll begin next time on page 318, chapter 15, the last visit to Keshav. It's a very touching chapter. Keshav, they said he was hardly recognizable. He was so weak and ill and thin and everything. And a very touching scene that we see how much devotion that Keshav had to Sri Ramakrishna at the end. So that'll be next time. Om Niranjanam Nityamanandarupam Bhaktanukham Bhatudha Vikrahamai Ishavataram Parameshamhidya Tam Ramakrishnam Shirasa Namama. We bow our heads before Sri Ramakrishna, who is stainless, of infinite nature, whose heart melts in sympathy for his devotees, who is an embodiment of the divine and the Supreme Lord, and ever worthy of our worship. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto. Okay. Thank you, everyone.